from the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus. This is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
My name is Evan Tate, and this is your news update to 12 o'clock. Our top story today, Metro Vancouver is blanketed with a snowstorm overnight. Much of Metro Vancouver and Vancouver Island saw 10 to 25 centimeters of snow overnight. Many drivers heading home Tuesday evening found themselves stuck in traffic for hours, and even into Wednesday morning due to road closures and poor conditions. Traffic on Highway 91 did not begin moving until approximately 6:45 a.m. Wednesday morning. Environment Canada have lifted the snowfall warnings for Vancouver Island and Metro Vancouver, but predicted up to 10 centimeters for the Fraser Valley and Whistler region of the Coquihalla. The snow also left many without power. More than 20,000 homes in BC are still without power Wednesday morning, a large portion of that coming from northern Vancouver Island. BC ferries and flights at YVR have seen cancellations as a result of the snow as well, with one passenger flight skidding off the runway and into the grass beside. The snow also caused delays to the start of the day for UBC and SFU, opting to open their campuses later in the day. The snow did not, however, affect BCIT's start times. BCIT's Director of Safety and Security says the whole Metro Vancouver situation isn't a factor to close campus. Reporter David Nava with the story.
Yesterday's snowstorm affected many students' trip back home, with some arriving safely until early morning. While some institutions like Simon Fraser University decided to close campus on Tuesday evening, BCIT didn't, which led to some negative comments online. BCIT Senior Director of Safety, Security and Emergency Management, Glenn Maggle, explains why the institute chose to continue activities as normal.
We had this kind of sense that people weren't well prepared for this week, so we sent the same two emails out yesterday. So that just gives people kind of an indicator that there is a plan in place, and always wanting people to be very cognizant of trying to wear the proper clothes.
Maggle also mentioned that he understands the decision of some students to not show up today, but his work is to think about finding the best decision for the whole BCIT community, not only students. David Nava, 1680 The Crow.
Reporter David Nava joins us with more. David, what are the students feeling on this decision?
Students feel yesterday's decision wasn't ideal. Even the ones that didn't have any conflicts going home yesterday were aware of the complications some of their classmates had. Regarding today's situation, they said conditions were safe and didn't have any complications at all to come to campus.
And how would a hypothetical cancellation of classes affected students?
Actually, when asked, students couldn't come with an ideal solution. Most programs had finals and labs scheduled for yesterday or today. An hypothetical cancellation will have meant the rescheduling of those. But rescheduling those would have been a bigger logistic challenge than the unfortunate commute some students faced yesterday.
Thank you, David. The province's anti-gang unit says alleged drug traffickers associated with the Wolfpack gang are being charged for offenses occurred in Vancouver's downtown east side. Police say prosecutors have approved 11 criminal counts, including organized crime charges against 6 men in their 20s and 30s. The charges follow an investigation that began in July 2020 and involved the execution of several search warrants. Among the illicit goods seized was 10 kilograms of fentanyl, 7 firearms, and over 1,000 rounds of ammunition and $160,000 in cash. The Surrey RCMP is pushing back against staffing figures released yesterday by the city's municipal police union. Assistant Commissioner Brian Edwards says the figures shared by the Surrey Police Union are misrepresentations and create fear. The figure shows 7 out of the 14 shifts in the past week were below minimum staffing levels. Edwards responds saying the Surrey RCMP detachment is currently exceeding its target of 734 positions. Looking at the rest of Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says nothing is off the table when it comes to responding to new legislation that would give Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's government broad powers. Trudeau stopped briefly on his way into the Liberal caucus meeting to say he's not looking for a fight with the province, but that the new legislation is raising eyebrows, even in Alberta. The bill, called the Alberta Sovereignty Within the United Canada Act, proposes to give Smith's cabinet the power to rewrite provincial laws without legislative debate. Smith proposed to bring in the legislation during the United Conservative Party leadership race to replace former Premier Jason Kenney, and she characterized the bill as a way to push back against Ottawa. Also in Alberta, Earthquakes Canada reported a series of tremors in northwestern Alberta yesterday. The largest was a magnitude of 5.8 earthquake shortly before 6 p.m. That was preceded by two 5.2 earthquakes, followed by several aftershocks. All three quakes occurred near Reno, a tiny rural hamlet about 40 kilometers southeast of the Peace River. RCMP say there was no reports of any injuries. A geologist says the largest earthquake ever recorded in Alberta was probably due to natural causes. In Ontario, residents of a Toronto-turned homeless shelter they don't know where they'll end up when they have to move out next week. Toronto leased the site after the pandemic hit, but the city says the property owner intends to convert it back into the hotel in the new year. That's left some residents, like overdose prevention worker Betty Ames, without a place to stay.
With the housing crisis in Toronto, the face of homelessness has changed. It's people with jobs, seniors, people with okay credit scores that just can't afford $1,500 a month.
Residents of the hotel have been given notice that they have to relocate by December 6th, and the city says it's working with them to find another shelter or permanent housing. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris meets with the French President Emmanuel Macron in NASA headquarters to celebrate the strong partnership in space exploration. With more on it, Elizabeth Schulze of ABC News.
The White House is saying bonjour to French President Emmanuel Macron as part of an official state visit. Macron kicked off the trip to Washington, meeting with Vice President Harris at NASA headquarters.
Mr. President, today we have the occasion to celebrate the cooperation of our two nations in space.
The vice president spent several days with Macron in Paris last year, reinforcing ties between the U.S. and France after a diplomatic spat over submarine technology. President Biden is set to host Macron Thursday for the first post-pandemic state dinner at the White House. Elizabeth Schulze, ABC News, Washington.
The Prince and Princess of Wales are making their first overseas trip since the death of Queen Elizabeth II in September. Charles de Ledesma has more.
The trip's an occasion for Prince William and his wife Kate to show the world as much about who they are not as who they are. With their 3-day visit to Boston, the couple hope to demonstrate that they aren't the last remnants of a dying institution. Their foray is focused on William's initiative to find the next generation of environmental entrepreneurs, and will be supplemented with trips to an anti-poverty program, child development researchers, and local flood defences. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
Moving into some sports news out of Quebec, 2 minor hockey coaches have been suspended for life from Hockey Ottawa following a violent interaction at Slush Puppy Centre in Quebec earlier this month. The 2 coaches reportedly fought with a third coach following a U15 match, leaving one with injuries. The 2 suspended coaches are no longer allowed to coach anywhere in the country. Checking in with what's going on in Qatar, Group D wrapped up their group stage games today with the early games this morning. Australia defeated Denmark 1-0 to help them advance to the round of 16. Tunisia upset France with the 1-0 win, although France's success early in the tournament punches their ticket into the knockout stage. The games between Saudi Arabia and Mexico is currently underway, as well as Poland versus Argentina to wrap up Group C's preliminary round. Both games currently stand at 0-0 at halftime. Looking back at the Canucks game last night, the Canucks took a convincing loss against Alexander Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals. Ovechkin potted 2 goals on the road in his team's 5-1 win. Ovechkin's second goal helped him surpass the great Wayne Gretzky for most goals in NHL history at 403. Most road goals in NHL history. Canucks coach Bruce Boudreau praises goaltender Spencer Martin.
It could have been 6-1 after the first period, quite frankly, with the amount of chances they had. I mean, Ovi's going to score. It looks like, on his second goal that, maybe he should have had it. But, I mean, I've seen him score 100 goals like that. I mean, it's just he's got that shot that finds its way in.
In other NHL news, the Boston Bruins extended their NHL record streak of home victories to open the season to 13 games by beating the Tampa Bay Lightning 3-1, behind 2 goals by Taylor Hall. Hall speaks on his new role on the third line.
Wherever you're slotted, you got to make the best of your ice time. And Charlie Coyle as a third line center, that's one of the best third line centers in the whole league. So
The weather for today is mostly cloudy with 3 degrees high. Snow still covers the ground in most parts of the city and is expected to snow again moving later into the week. Thank you for listening to 1680 The Crow. I'm Evan Tate, and that's your news update till noon.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
It's extremely important for people to stay healthy and to stay active as much as possible.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikki-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikki-King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
guess we'll get right into it. We are doing a companion call here today. I'm Evan Smith, your host. I'm here with Paul Langford, who is the coach for the women's basketball team at Riverside Secondary. And I'm here with Lisa. Gonna just make sure I pronounce this name perfectly. Sulatitsky, which is the head of recreation services here at BC and BCIT, and a former volleyball coach. So today what we're going to be looking at is just the women's participation in sports and how that relates somewhat to coaching. So I guess I'll just throw a couple questions your guys' way to start here, and we'll get more into a conversation after that. So the first question I'm going to ask you guys is there a different way to approach coaching females in sport than men? Do each of you have experience that you can speak on for that?
I can go first. I coached boys for 9 years before I had ever coached girls. I grew up with lots of brothers and one sister, so I lived in a guy world, and so my first experience with coaching females was in Mission in 1985, and I went and asked a lot of people what I should do, and I got some great advice, and I shared this story probably 1,000 times, but one person said to me, "Be careful what you say, because if you tell girls to do it, they'll do it." So and it was great advice, because I've been coaching girls since 85, and it's a big difference between coaching young females and young boys.
Right. And then Lisa, in your experience, have you coached females, males, primarily one, bit of both?
Primarily females. I really haven't had the opportunity to coach males.
Okay. And what leadership traits do you think are important in coaching females specifically?
Ooh, good question. I think it's just really understanding the mental part of the game for females, kind of thing on it, and how they take things, like, I think, forward on it thing, and they like that you check in with them all the time, kind of thing, and they really want to see what's going on and understand what's going on, kind of thing. So you can't leave them alone or let them be isolated on things.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of just speaking on coaching females then, I was reading a report today, the Rally report, and this study shows that Canadian girls aged 6 to 18 have a dropout rate of about 1 in 3, as opposed to males in that same age group, which is 1 in 10. So I was just wondering, could one of you speak on that and how this may correlate to less females being in coaching roles further down the line?
Well, it's definitely going to affect, you're always looking to get female role models, and coaching is really hard, for one. I coach basketball, so that's a real skill sport. So when you've got a skill sport, it's really hard to coach. So finding female coaches and getting females to play, and then that trickling into them coaching in one day is certainly a chain that you want to do. But I think it's it's COVID's changed a lot of different things, and we've opened up and seen, and the participation with everybody is really down, but it really hurt females. You talked about guys and coaching girls. Coaching girls you have to build up, I believe, and coaching boys you have to knock down, because the confidence of girls and around their peers and all that, they're very, very self-conscious, and you continually have to give them confidence and build them up. That's what I find. But
I would agree with you on that too, for sure, Paul. That confidence and that level of confidence, and if you check in with them or don't check in them, like by saying one thing to them, they could lead it one way or the other way, for sure, on it.
Absolutely. So then, do you guys think that an absence of girls/women in sports leads to less women taking on leadership roles, not just in sport, but maybe beyond that? I understand that might be a broad question, but if one of you could tackle that in some sense.
I mean, it definitely is a broad question. I haven't been in the coaching world for a while, but I know when we were in the coaching world, to come around the age 16 is when we saw the big dropout for volleyball individuals, and I think it was more individuals when they really wanted to pursue that sport at a higher level. That's when they would continue playing in the sport, and when they were just they've had enough with, they would stopped around that age group, kind of thing. And you saw that a lot in volleyball, just with the club participation and the individuals that played. And for sure, it impacted those individuals that stopped playing, whether they wanted to coach or not, kind of thing on it. So,
Yeah. Kind of just expanding on that. I know my sister actually used to play volleyball and dropped out at a similar rate. And me and my mom had went to see some of her games, and she was good. She was. But when reading into what like some people perceive as barriers for keeping women engaged in sports, one of those is the self-perceived lack of skill. Have you noticed that when coaching women, or in even your own sporting experience yourself?
I mean, I think everybody has a different image. Like I said, I haven't been in the coaching world for a long time, so I know like I'm talking more pre-COVID thing than post-COVID thing on it. I would say that individuals, they wanted to feel like they have to have a certain level, and I know with coaches in BC, they wanted a certain level in order to go to the post-secondary level and everything. And I think a lot of that age group too was about whether they would play on would be a little bit of camaraderie with their teammates, and if they felt they wanted to play. Like some of them just played because they really enjoy playing with their team and their teammates, knowing that they probably wouldn't go into post-secondary. And then some of them specifically played because they were going into post-secondary. And then I think there's just a lot of other dynamics that come into play. And I think Paul had too with coaching, it's not just the physical X's and O's of coaching on things. There's a lot of mental components and team building and dynamics that come into play. And when you're coaching, I always say it's a 24-hour role, because you don't, as a coach, you just don't leave the game and then it's over with kind of thing. You're always thinking and strategizing about what you can do as a team to either build your team up, or to what direction do you need to go on, and then what are the issues that are on your team in order to get that team to be together and work together as a group.
Right. And then just you spoke briefly on the mental component of sports. Could you both just give your insight into what you think, like what type of empowerment does sports give people, like self-confidence and all that stuff that you take away going forward from playing team sports?
That's why we play sports, is to have fun, and I love coaching young females to give them the power and show them that the empowerment that sports can give them. Coaching's really changed though, and we've got social media and you've got a bunch of different things, so everything is magnified, and you have to make sure that the kids are having fun. If they're not having fun, there's a million other things to do now, and there's only everything's smaller in the fact that there's less places to play, and it's really tough out there. So this is a great topic. You could go forever on it. But basically you just have to keep it fun, and then you've got to teach all the different things of why you're playing sport and how sport is like life and life is like sport. And if you can pull that off, you're doing a great job. If you lose them, it's really hard to get them back.
Yeah. I think just like the skill sets of taking responsibility of things, to be there for your teammates, just like it's like going to a job. Like you have to be there and to work towards a common goal kind of thing on it. I think a communication piece is really important too, of how do you interact with individuals, because you might not like everybody on your team, but you still have to work together towards a common goal and things.
And actually, just kind of speaking on like how to keep people engaged with sports, you kind of spoke on the fun component that's supposed to come with sports, right? When I was playing competitive sports myself, like throughout high school, I took a brief 2-year hiatus because I did not agree with the way my coach coached me. And we actually, the parents of this team ended up signing a petition later to get him kicked off the team, and that was the reason I went back. So how do you, as a coach, keep someone engaged and kind of toe that line between maybe being too tough and just being critical because you want them to perform at their best?
It's called building a culture. Like, I've been at Riverside for over 20 years, and you try and build a culture, and you try and show them that if you get through this program and if you enjoy it and you learn by it, there's some benefits. We practice at 6 a.m. So I get parents that'll tell me that their daughters will not get up at that time. She's not going to do it. And then, 5 years later after she graduates, she tells me that she's in the gym every morning at 5, and it's awesome. And those are the stories I like to hear. I like to hear that they like physical fitness, they like staying in shape, they like being part of the community. Those are the wins. So you build a culture that is great for them to be involved in, and be part of a team and be part of a community, and that's the catch that I look for as a coach, and that's what I'm trying to build.
Absolutely. And then another question I had just in my brain earlier, was do you think that male success in sports overshadows female success? Like at the high school level, at the collegiate level, at even higher levels than that, do you think that plays into it at all, and maybe even like female participation within the sport?
I think it depends where you're at a little bit on things. I mean, like at the women's soccer program, like for Canada, Team Canada, they've had way more success than the men's, but it will be interesting to see what happens with the men's program and where they're developing. And I think sometimes it's that sometimes they can breed off each other and build off each other kind of thing on it. When they have one program is more successful than the other program, you can kind of that helps supports, because it shows that you can have success. And if it's a male program or a female program, that means there's things in place there in order for them to have success. So I do think a little bit is in the environment that is created to support those programs and the team.
Right. And do you think there are like certain programs that could be like put in place maybe to just like increase leadership to help develop those traits?
What do you mean by what programs?
Well, when I was reading a report today, and it came from, I think it was a company called Viasport, and they actually brought up developing a gender equity in sport and physical activity policy, and this is something that would be implemented throughout BC. And the intent of this objective is to develop a sports sector for British Columbia that is committed to upholding a balanced representation of gender in sport. And then one of those was also one of the programs they had within there was specifically focused on leadership. And I was actually a little confused about what that would entail. So I was just wondering if either of you had an idea of how these programs could help someone develop those leadership skills, or if that's something that might not be achievable and it might be just a trait that's developed over time, or something that's inherently there within yourself.
We work really hard on trying to get the girls program to be identical to the guys program. BC School Sports offer the same female. I mean, there's not football, but they've got other sports that girls play, the guys don't play. I think things are pretty equal, and the whole landscape is changing. Before there wasn't a WNBA, now there's a WNBA. Do they draw as many people as? No, they don't. And but there's female role models now that there never have been. Serena Williams is far more well known than Martina Navratilova was, or Billie Jean King. But I mean, Billie Jean King probably changed that a lot. So I think the game's changing, and now in the States, you had Title IX, which you had to give out the same amount of scholarships, and those things that helped, I think, a lot. But now you have a thing called NIL, like name, image, and likeness, and that's going to be a whole new world. Because we watched a UCLA practice a week ago, and there was a girl standing there in the practice, and she had a $1 million contract. So that didn't happen before. So and there's lots of reasons why she wasn't the best player on the team. I want to share that as well. There's some advantages in that. I don't think you can make people watch female sports, but I think social media has helped it, and I think there's lots of different things. The Canadian soccer team's female soccer team is a good example of it, and I think things are pretty positive in those types of venues. Male athletes are still going to get, if they're going to sign the pro contracts, they're still going to be more attractive.
Right. And I guess one more question that's maybe a little bit off topic is just, what do you guys look for in players? What makes a good player? Is it dedication? Is it skill? Is it a combination of both? And if they're lacking maybe one of those departments, in your guys' experience, how do you develop that?
If it goes to me, the number one thing you want is toughness, and it's mental toughness. You want them. This is a crazy world now, and there's a lot of distractions, and you want athletes that have mental toughness. And if you've got kids that can catch and throw and run and jump, that's all great. But your number one thing is you want somebody who's got toughness, and if it's physical toughness, that's great, and if it's mental toughness, it's better.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that too, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like they obviously, if you're at a certain level, the level that you're at, they have to have a skill level in order to play that level. But then what distinguishes them too is just their ability to fight through things and battle through things. And you can see that when they play the sport and what they do when they're in that critical moment or tough moment of the game. Like that's what I look. Not that they've had success in it, but did they battle out of it, right? On it.
Right. And are there ways to develop that, or do you think if someone doesn't have that, it's closed and shut?
I think they can. I think they have to have a little bit of it before you start, but you certainly can build it. You can build it in just making decisions, giving them ownership, letting them watch other people. But yeah, I think you can build on it. It's hard to get somebody who doesn't have any of it, but you certainly can make it grow.
Yeah. Right. And that's part of like coaching, right? Empowering the athletes to have that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to say thank you to both of you. I don't want to keep you too much longer. So again, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. And for everyone listening, you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
first started playing music with Charlie, specifically punk music. Loved punk rock. And then one day we were like, oh, let's go see the Pixies, because they're coming to Vancouver. They're playing with Weezer, another 90s alternative band. Afterwards, Charlie came up to me and was like, dude, like, we should start a band. Like, we should actually try and do music. That'd be so cool. Like, let's do it.
All right. All right, this one's called Slap Bye Baby. He said, babe, I want to be in that ass like a parasite. How do you think my touch is what heaven's like? How do you know like they scream when I go for the throat? How do you know what it's like to watch blood pour on my nose?
And so we go through that first quarantine, and it was a search for a drummer, because it was me and Zach on guitar. I was doing most of the singing, Charlie was on bass.
I was learning guitar and Lars was learning all kinds of instruments, so we just kind of messed around. And then it kind of got stale after a while because we couldn't really work off each other in that particular arrangement.
And we were just like desperate for someone who would be able to play drums, and then we'd be good to go, right? And so probably the most musical person in our grade at the time was a certain man named Knight O'Connor, who played guitar, played bass, and played the drums.
So, I mean, I knew everybody from high school. I knew Lars, Zach, and Charlie. And I knew that they were playing music together. And I knew that there was a party coming up that Charlie was throwing. So I went to that. And I managed to corner Lars and Charlie. And I was like, hey, you know, I know how to play drums. And I heard that you guys are down a drummer. I can play drums for you if you'd like that.
We started going, and Knight is a pretty rough drummer, and it was fun, but we were like, okay, this is a good place for this band to start. Like, this will work, we just gotta give it time and learn stuff. And we were like, all right, like, let's take a little break, right?
And then we figured it out, because Knight's a way better bassist than he is a drummer. Lars is a way better drummer than he is guitarist. I moved the keyboard because I'm much better at that than bass. And Zach stayed on guitar because he's so good.
And then we like played the best I'd ever played up at that point in any group setting ever. Played some of the most fun music, rough and raw, but exciting and new and fun. And we knew we would never go back to the old instruments. From that point on, we were like stuck in those spots. But I'd say our biggest influence was coming from Pink Floyd. 'Cause we adored Pink Floyd, as the typical high school stoners we were. We loved Pink Floyd, and we'd sit there and listen to Dark Side of the Moon or The Wall and dedicate hours to it and stuff. You know, way more important than schoolwork at the time. You know, you gotta get your listens in on some Pink Floyd records, you know. But as to who I would compare us to and who we sound like the most, well, we get a lot of people who say we sound like the Doors.
I've heard from a lot of people that we apparently sound like the Doors in terms of our musical arrangement.
Which is funny because I'm not even that big of a Doors fan. But Charlie's a massive Doors fan, and once again, that's where the Doors got their sound, was through those keys and stuff.
I don't think a lot of people have an answer for Knight's singing. He kind of just sings like Knight, he just shouts. I like it.
As far as genre goes, Lars and I came up with psychedelic funk and punk.
So a lot of bands, whether or not they're a one-hit wonder or whatever, a lot of bands have that song, like the song, their song. It's a song that people say, oh yeah, they sing blank. For Queen, it's probably Bohemian Rhapsody. For Led Zeppelin, you have to say it's Stairway to Heaven. Like Nirvana's It Smells Like Teen Spirit. So if I asked you, what's your song? What's the song for Big Long Baby?
Bugs.
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 Bugs?
But who gives a shit about insects?
I wrote Bugs about drug use and how it kind of affected me and how, you know, there's that blasé attitude. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. Roaches in my lung, roaches in my heart, kickstart. But it's about drugs, and it's got that kind of like evil feeling to it, you know, about how it's super fast paced, and then it's, you know, you're getting hit with it.
Give a shit about insects? Think you care too much? We don't who takes care of Terraria? Give a shit about insects? Think you care too much?
That was the easiest song we've ever written too, and I think we finished that song in like three like band practices. We actually like completed that song with the words, with everything. Yeah, it was by far the easiest song we've ever written, and the most excited I think we've ever been writing a song. It was very fun to write that one, because we were like, fuck, this is cool.
So I remember playing it, and I just sat there for, must have been like half an hour just trying to work it out. And then I got like the verse chorus down, and then I wrote this like slow, heavy part. And I was like, this is great. So I recorded it and I sent it to the band, and they're like, that's fucking awesome. Yeah, I just really channeled how I was feeling into the words and made a singable melody that still kind of felt punky and had that attitude. And then I brought the words into practice, and then we played it together, and it was done. That was, I think, probably one of the first songs that we sat back and were really proud of.
But yeah, Bugs was like, that was our first and only, thus far, masterpiece that we've made.
if I leave them on, I've ruined the streak of the last like 10 years of never wearing shoes before.
I do all kinds of tattoos, whatever the customer asks for mostly. But lately I've been doing mostly like form line style indigenous tattoos. I'm Métis on my dad's side, but I was raised by my mom. So I didn't grow up with a huge personal connection to my indigenous ancestry. But as I started doing more indigenous tattoos, that kind of like got me a little bit more interested in finding more about my own history.
Và sẽ hadi tundo, tademius li, saschos li, nadle within yinka dene dakesh. In my language, that means my name is Randall Bear Barnetson. I come from the Bear clan, the village of Nadle, and of the Dakelh First Nation. That's my nation.
The back tattoo, I think it's been about 12 hours now, I would say. 10 to 12 hours. On my left arm here, I have the bear for Dentemu, my bear clan. And then I have the Thunderbirds on the middle, and then the double eagles on the bottom. So this is for my Dakelh people on my mother's side. And then also the double eagles from my Newhawk family, and then the Thunderbirds from my father's side. His crest was a Thunderbird. So that's why I have the Thunderbird on my back as well, along with the bear. Since time immemorial, we would commission an artist to do a clan design or a crest for us in our community. We'd go to a local artist and ask them to do a design for our clan or community to represent ourselves, our family, our community, and our nation.
Hadi, Ani, Sasan, welcome to my studio.
So my tattoos, they all represent that, from my bear clan to my Thunderbirds to my eagle clan. They represent and they place me in my community and show my affiliation there. And so that's why I love working with Logan, because Logan, he helps me to kind of embody these teachings in these clans and crests, and he really contextualizes these teachings that we have. And then on this side, I got the East Van cross, because where I was born, East Van. So I kind of go between two, because traditionally, land and people are the most important things to us as traditional indigenous people. So when I turned 18, I was like, I'm gonna get the East Van cross on my arm. I'm gonna go to do it. I went to a tattoo artist and he said, nah, come back in a couple of years when you figure it out a bit more. And I was like, what the hell, man? Like, I wanna get tattooed. And he was like, nah, think about it some more, come back. And then I waited a decade and then Logan did it for me.
My name is Shanton Hopkins. I am a tattoo artist here at East Van Tattoo Company. Born and raised in East Vancouver. I am Indigenous to Darcy Anderson Lake, better known to us as the Naquaqua people. It's part of the Stallion Nation. So growing up, I was a pretty rebellious kid. Just always getting into trouble, getting into fights, drinking, stealing cars when I was like 12. Went to jail when I was like 14. It's just a lot of pain and trauma from like my mother. She was an alcoholic who dealt with her generational trauma from my grandmother, who was in residential school. So just like trickled down, passed down to me, right? But like me and myself, I've been doing like a lot of work on myself. I've been sober now for like 3 years. Trying to break the chain and the link for my kids, right? So my style, I do like, I like to stick with like a realism, black and gray, but I like to try to incorporate like a native form line art to it. So I do my own West Coast style, like form line, native art with the realism. Yeah, it's just sort of like a unique touch that I wanted to come up with. Like, for me, I always wanted to sort of incorporate like the native art inside of my tattoo work. And black and gray realism is something that I always wanted to pursue. I want to keep that style of art alive. I want to keep the form line art alive, right? It's been here already for centuries. Even though it's been tweaked a little bit, whatever, like all artists have their own styles of their own art, right? Well, we have all kinds of different backgrounds. Getting like Oriental Japanese style sleeves. I tattooed this native guy just last week. We did a full native realism piece on his arm, full sleeve. He already had an existing like Oriental Japanese style dragon on his other arm, right? I'm like, yeah, if like you have like enough love and respect for the culture, like I don't see why it would be an issue for anybody to want to get like form line native art tattooed on their bodies, right? If it's nothing but love and respect, that's all that matters, right?
I think it's really complicated. It's non-Indigenous people, unless there's like, the way I was taught is if there's a story, connection to the story, and you go about it in a good way, as you do work with an Indigenous artist, and you go about the proper protocols, and you know the story and the connection there, then it's more acceptable. However, if you get a clan design or a clan crest, then that has such larger meaning behind it, and affiliation to, like I said, to place, community, to people. And you're essentially saying that you are part of them, and that's a tough thing to claim. And we always say it's not who you claim, but who claims you.
It's a little controversial, and it's everybody has a differing viewpoint, and for me it's different client to client. Like sometimes, like I have some European tourist that's like, yeah, I want this salmon because I'm in Canada. And in that case, like, you know, go home and think about it a little bit, do a little bit of research. But other times, like I've tattooed white people that have been adopted by a nation and have lived their whole life on reserve and around Indigenous art and Indigenous people, and they want to honor that. And I think that's dope too. The bar down over there, it's like, was a strip club.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon and welcome to 1680 The Crow. I'm Evan Tate and this is your sports update to 1 o'clock. Looking at today's World Cup results, the final group stage games for today have just wrapped. Mexico took the 2-1 win against Saudi Arabia with 2 second-half goals. Argentina and Poland matched up at the same time, with Argentina taking that one 2-0. Group D wrapped up their group stage games with the early games this morning. Australia defeated Denmark 1-0 to help them advance to the round of 16. Tunisia upset France with a 1-0 win, although France's success early in the tournament punches their ticket into the knockout stage. Looking at the Canadian national team, Canada wraps up its World Cup campaign tomorrow against Morocco, hoping to end on a winning note after a 4-1 loss to Croatia. Coach John Herdman says the Canadian men have already left their mark.
I think as a group we've tactically and with our identity took some big steps in this tournament. I think football people who've been waiting for Canada to arrive were wondering how we were going to show up, and I think we showed up on the front foot, and that'll be our approach again. We'll stay committed to our identity, and we'll go into this match with an opportunity to make some more history.
In hockey news, Pittsburgh Penguins defenseman Chris Letang is out indefinitely after suffering the second stroke of his NHL career. General Manager Ron Hextall says the former All-Star was taken to the hospital Monday morning after reporting symptoms to the team's medical staff. The 35-year-old last suffered a stroke during the 2014 season, where he missed more than 2 months as a result. Tests taken reveals Letang was born with a tiny hole in the wall of his heart. Some minor league hockey news out of Quebec.
2 minor hockey coaches have been suspended for life from Hockey Ottawa following a violent interaction at Slush Puppy Center in Quebec earlier this month. The 2 coaches reportedly fought with a third coach following a U15 match, leaving one with injuries. The 2 suspended coaches are no longer allowed to coach anywhere in the country. Looking ahead at the NHL games tonight, 3 Canadian teams will be in action, starting with the Rangers in Ottawa to take on the Senators at 4 p.m. The Rangers head into the game on a 3-game losing skid and plan to start winless goaltender this season Jaroslav Halak. Also starting at 4, the Leafs are hosting Erik Karlsson and the San Jose Sharks. The Swedish defenseman comes into the game as the NHL's leading scorer amongst defensemen and currently sits 5th in the entire NHL in scoring. Lastly, Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers are in Chicago to face off against the Blackhawks at 6:30. McDavid is currently 1st in the NHL in scoring at 39 points, with running mate Leon Draisaitl trailing behind him with 33 in 4th. In the NHL last night, Matthew Tkachuk returned for his first game in Calgary since being traded. The Panthers have just 3 regulation wins in their last 10 games. They've been without A-Lane captain Alexander Barkov in 3 straight losses. Tkachuk says Panthers need to dig deeper without their captain.
Everybody else just has to step up, and this road trip is very important for us. 3 more games here, so that's 3 losses in a row.
The Panthers continue their Western road trip tomorrow in Vancouver against the Canucks. Tiger Woods has withdrawn from playing in a tournament he is hosting in the Bahamas this weekend. Woods said plantar fasciitis in his right foot makes it difficult to walk over 72 holes, even on a relatively flat course. He says he can no longer do things he was once able to.
As I was ramping up and I had to walk more, the worse it got. So when you get plantar fasciitis, that's the worst thing you can do is walk. And I was walking more and more and more, trying to get my legs ready for this event, and I just kept making it worse.
Woods says he would take a month or 2 to rest, which won't affect his golf schedule because he wasn't playing that much. In high school sports, BC Place is hosting the provincial championship final for high school football this Saturday. The AAA varsity game between Vancouver College and G.W. Graham will kick off at 7 p.m., following the AA final between Robert Bateman and John Barsby secondary schools. The morning will host the junior varsity finals, where Vernon Secondary is set to face Windsor in the 9:30 a.m. match. The following game will see Vancouver College playing New West Secondary for the junior varsity championship. Last night in the NBA, Luka Doncic scored 41 points in his NBA-leading 5th triple-double, and the Dallas Mavericks beat the Golden State Warriors 116-113 in the first meeting of last season's Western Conference finalists. That's your sports update for 1 p.m. I'm your host, Evan Tate, and thank you for listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.